Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir à tous et à toutes, and welcome to tonight's presentation of OTF Connects on working with two variable relationships with Kyle Pierce. My personal experience on the subject, not as a mathematician but as a husband, is that relationships are indeed far too variable and definitely require work. I certainly look forward to Kyle's presentation this evening on working with such two variable relationships. Joke aside, we are thrilled to have you all with us tonight from across the province, and it's also our absolute pleasure to welcome Kyle Pierce. A few words about Kyle. While I have not met him personally yet, I have heard that he plays in a band and is quite a talented musician, confirming, if need be, that music and mathematics are indeed closely related. And another rather interesting anecdote was reported to me a few months ago by Lindy Amato, who is Director of Professional Affairs at OTF. At the time, Lindy was meeting in Boston with some MIT professors who were collaborating on one of her projects. In the course of the conversation, she nonchalantly said, one of the teachers we're working with, Kyle, has been very active in, and then before she could even complete her sentence, one of the professors said, "You mean Kyle Pierce?" So I guess this MIT anecdote says a lot about Kyle's international reputation and how fortunate we are to have him with us tonight. So at this point, without further ado, I will pass the microphone to Kyle and let him keep introducing himself, probably better than I could. So Kyle, feel free to click on your talk button to turn your microphone on, and then go ahead anytime you wish. So the class is yours.
Thank you so much, Michel. That was an excellent introduction. I guess to clarify a few things. I would say I used to be a relatively talented musician, and since now I'm just sort of the guitar playing dad to his children, but definitely do enjoy picking up the guitar still and doing a little bit of singing when the children will allow it. Wow, what an honor to hear the story of that Lindy Amato had shared with you from MIT. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I've never really thought of working with two variable relationships in such a way that Michel had mentioned, but you know what? I think he's definitely nailed it. You know what? Two variables can definitely affect each other in many different ways, and tonight we're going to look at a few of those examples. So I want to start. I always like starting with giving a little bit of background, but for our OTF sessions, I always try to keep things different, but also, you know, sort of circle back to, I guess, my big idea in the mathematics classroom. And, you know, for me, it all starts with the buzzword called engagement. And, you know, for years, it seems like I've heard this buzzword used in education over and over again, yet I haven't really heard a whole lot of people actually define it very well. And it wasn't until I started doing some digging that I realized that, you know what, there's all kinds of different types of engagement. And oftentimes, I think we get tricked into thinking when students are engaged intellectually or cognitively, many times I think it could be something else, such as a behavioral type of engagement, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. My career, as some of you may know, some of our returning members here may remember, I started teaching with a very traditional format. I had very structured notes, and I would write these up on the board for my students, and I just looked and I saw the look of disgust from my students. Maybe it was just how I was teaching. I was brand new at the time, but I knew I had to start doing something. I had to change something. So I whipped out the projector. I started putting all my notes on slides. And you know what? While my students were behaviorally engaged, I don't think I was intellectually engaging them. So it wasn't until I started facing my math problems and realizing that, you know what, a lot of the math problems that I thought I was solving, I was really just slapping a Band-Aid on top of them. My math classroom, as many of you have seen before, this is a slide that I do bring up at almost all of my presentations. My math class looked traditional in this sense. I was the gatekeeper of knowledge. That second point here, definitions, formulas, procedures, and algorithms, that was all me. And I thought, you know what, without me in the room, you know, the students won't have any new learning that day. And I'm starting to realize that while this format is still effective when appropriate, it doesn't have to look like this every single day. All right, so again, not discounting that this cannot be effective. It definitely can be, but for me, I needed to start moving things around and ensure that my classroom had different pieces to it. So in order to start today, before we get into our two variable relationships, I thought we would talk a little bit about learning. And this is relatively new to me, but recently I learned a little bit about the 4 stages of learning, and I like to call it the 4 stages of mastery. And the reason I call it that is because in my math class, I'm always talking to my students about trying to master skills. And, you know, some people might debate that you can never become a true master. You should always be able to learn something new, and I do agree with that. The idea of my class is I want students to be coming back to ideas. I want them to kind of wrestle with them, and I want them to continue building that understanding, and I want them to feel like they're going for that mastery. So, you know, we are dealing with 2 variable relationships, so what better way to start off the evening than with a 2 variable relationship? And the 2 variables we're going to talk a little bit about are consciousness and competence. And when we start the first stage of mastery, or the first stage of learning, typically starts at the origin here, at 0, 0, where 0, we have 0, you know, 0 amount of competence or no competence whatsoever, and we also have no consciousness. And this stage, we call it unconsciously incompetent. So thinking about that for a little bit, a little saying that'll help you remember this first stage is, I don't know what I don't know. And I'm sure you've heard people say that before. A lot of times people don't know what they don't know. And you know what? You know, ignorance is bliss is another expression that you hear oftentimes, because you don't know what you're missing out on. And many times learners, especially in the math classroom, they don't know what they're missing out on. And that's where we want to come in and we want to inspire them to sort of get conscious about the different things that they're missing and the exciting pieces of mathematics that we can share with them, and hopefully they'll love it just as much as we do. So I want to give you a quick little example of what that might look like in a math class, just to give you a bit of context. You know, the question from the teacher might be, count how many candies there are. And what you might see is a student thinking, okay, well, they're unconsciously incompetent of any sort of skill of how to do this other than simply counting out those candies. And the student might justify, I counted each candy, and there's 21 total, and that is it. Whereas if we start moving up to our second stage, where a student becomes consciously incompetent, this is where they know what it is that they don't know. If we go back to that same example, this student might start thinking, you know what, I know I'm supposed to multiply here. I know there's an easier way than just counting, but I'm not sure how. So they're at least aware that there is some sort of skill that they could learn in order to make this task easier. But unfortunately, in stage 2, or the second stage of mastery or learning, this student's going to have to continue to count as well. I counted each candy, and there's 21 total. Only when that level of competence starts to increase, when we start to increase this level of competence to becoming consciously competent, this is where a student has grown and they know it, and it starts to show. And this is where a student might start looking at that same particular question, and they might start to see groups. They might start to see, for example, 7 groups of 3 candies and maybe count up by 3s to get there. So they're now becoming competent in the idea of grouping and starting to get towards that more efficient method of multiplication. Or they might group it this way. They might group it into groups of 7 and count up by 7s in order to get, adding 7 candies 3 times, there are 21 total candies. But I think what we're all after in the mathematics classroom is this 4th stage where you become unconsciously competent. That's where you're simply doing what you do because of what you know. all right, or I simply go because of what I know. And when we look at that same question, a student's going to see this and say, you know what? There are 3 rows, there are 7 columns or 3 groups of 7 candies, and I know the answer is 21. I don't have to think about the grouping. I don't have to add by 3s or count up by 3s or count up by 7s. I know the answer is 21 because I have reached that level of mastery for this particular topic. So today what I want to talk to you a little bit about is trying to apply these 4 stages of mastery and trying to help students get there, because I think that for all math teachers, when we look at the 4 stages of mastery, it starts to break down a few things. We hear a lot of people talking about math facts and about students, not knowing their multiplication tables, and I think those are all very valid things for students to be able to recall and to have that automaticity. But I think a lot of times we sort of jump from stage 1, and we want students to somehow get to stage 4 without really going through stage 2 and 3. So today what I want to do is kind of talk about some of the things we might do with 2 variable relationships that might help us get students from stage 2 over to stage 3, and then eventually where they unconsciously are competent in the area of 2 variable relationships. So again, that 4 stages of mastery, for me, I've been thinking about it a lot in my classroom of how do I get my students from 1 stage all the way to that 4th stage. And that brings me to my vision in the mathematics classroom. If you've been in any of my sessions before, you've seen this before. It is being extended. I continue to refine it a little bit. But what I'm trying to do in my classroom is trying to make things contextual, visual, and concrete and show how math is interconnected. And by doing that, tonight we're going to be looking at how we can potentially use some tasks in order to introduce concepts so that students can use the inquiry process to construct their own conceptual understanding prior to making some connections to their prior knowledge, and then finally leading them towards a more procedural fluency that I think we're all after. So whether you look at it as the 4 stages of mastery or learning, or whether you look at it as this particular 4 parts to a math lesson, I think that they're very closely related. So we're going to start digging in here, and we're going to put you folks through a task. Some of you have already logged into our playkh.com room, and I'm just going to swing over there. I see 5 people in that room. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post the instructions in the chat as well. You're going to be opening up a new tab in a couple minutes here. And I do want to also mention that all of the content from tonight can be found in our Curious Math 1P or the Curious Math Foundations of Mathematics iTunes U course if you have an iOS device. So if you have an iPhone or an iPad or even a Mac, you can access it through that link there. And I know that Michelle will be sharing this link throughout the session as well as at the end of the session. So don't panic if you don't grab it right this second. But also, everything is available on the web. So if you don't have an iOS device, you can head to this website, which is my personal website, where I've got a ton of 3-act math tasks that some of which we're going to be looking at this evening. So definitely give those a look, and everything you see here you'll be able to find on those 2 resources in the iTunes U course as well as on Tap into Teen Minds. So what I'm going to have you folks do, if you haven't already, is head to that playkh.com page, and your game pin is going to be Wiz623, and I see it looks like everybody's in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Awesome. Michelle, you're more than welcome to join us. You don't have to. Don't feel pressured, but you're more than welcome to jump in if you kind of want to see what that's like. I should also mention as well, I should have put this in the chat box, if you have a mobile device around you, feel free to leave your computer with the webinar up on the screen, because I'm going to be doing a screen share shortly to kind of show you what it looks like from the teacher side, or what the projector would look like in a math classroom. And you can actually be running this game show on your phone, whether it's an Android, an Apple device, or some other device. As long as you've got access to the web, you can log in through that particular device. So The benefit of using a mobile device is that you'll be able to use the upload solution feature, which I find very beneficial in the classroom. You're going to notice that Knowledgehook Gameshow is very similar to Kahoot, except there's a lot more flexibility in terms of turning off timers. There's a lot better stats tracking, and it is specifically made for mathematics, and that feature of uploading a solution using the camera on your device is a huge help. So if you have a mobile device, that's my suggestion for you, because it would be great to see some of your predictions I'm going to ask you to make tonight, and then you can snap a picture of them and I can share them on the screen through a screen share. So go ahead and do that. I'll just kind of run you through what it looks like on the administrator side of things, or on the teacher's side. So for example, if you have a teacher's account, by creating one at knowledgehook.com, it's a free account. You could go in and you can actually run ready-made content for Ontario teachers. It's all free. And you can also create a custom game show. So for me, I can create custom game shows, and that's what I've done for you folks tonight. When you go to run the game show, you've got all kinds of great options. Upload solution, I always leave on. Removing the time bonus, I always do. I do not like using a timer. And then we go ahead and open the waiting room. And I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share, or go ahead and actually share my application. So I'm going to go and share Google Chrome here. And I'm going to take a moment, and I'm going to confirm with Michelle, am I successfully web sharing? Or screen sharing, I should
yes,
say.
Hi, Tal. Yes, you're screen sharing, but remember that it takes a while to refresh. So when you're moving from one screen to the next, while you may be already on the new screen, we're still seeing the screens moving. So when you do application sharing, you have to go very slowly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that, because I always bounce around. So that's definitely a good tip. I appreciate it. Awesome. So you can see my screen. That's excellent. This is what I see. This is what would be on your projector in the classroom if you were running a game show. Students can log in using a guest pin. My students, because we use it fairly often, they've created their own account, so they would just log in and hit the game show button, and then they're right in there. So it's pretty convenient to do as well. I can see all the students that are in the course or in my room, and I could actually go in, and if there's an inappropriate name or something like that, I could boot you out hitting this little X. But none of you would do that. So I'm going to go ahead and press start. And on your screen, you're not going to see it on my screen, but you're going to see it on your screen. I've put a video, I've embedded a video for you folks to watch. And I've done this purposely because I know there's going to be some lag. So I'm going to give you a second to watch that video. And then in the text box, I'm going to ask you to type in what you notice or what you wonder. It can be a combination of both. And then we'll have you submit that for us. And those solutions will come up, or those text responses will come up on the screen. So I'll give you guys a moment to do that, and then we'll share out. All right, I see 3 folks have locked in a response. I should also preface as well, it doesn't have to be perfect. We don't need, wonderful paragraphs or MLA format. Just some ideas. Could be one-word answers, could be, a few things. But go ahead and what did you notice? What are you wondering out there? And then that'll help set the stage for where we're going. Awesome stuff. So as you're finishing that up, I'm sure you can see on your screen, assuming it's refreshing at an appropriate rate or at a reasonable rate. We have 6 out of 11 folks locked in, which is nice. And typically what I would do with this particular task, sorry about that, Chris. That is something that I have actually put in as a request, a feature request, is the option to be able to submit multiple times. That is something that they do have on their roadmap. They also, something else you'll notice later on, when you select an answer, for example, I give you a survey or if I give you a multiple choice, if you tap the screen and you hit one, you can't unselect it, automatically sends it, and that's something that I've had a few students ask about as well. So I have mentioned that as well, but it wouldn't hurt for them to hear it from another person. So if you do want to use this tool in the classroom, definitely they are very responsive. These guys are out of Waterloo, and they are a new startup, and you know, really seem to be, you know, trying to lock in on, you know, what it is teachers are looking for. So definitely let them know. All right, well, we have 7 locked in, so I'm going to go ahead and end the question. I think we're at about 7 in the room, so that makes sense. Some people may have logged in twice, maybe on their device and on their computer, so that might make sense for why we've got 11. So I'm going to hit the end question button. In this case, this was just an open response. There's no right or wrong answer here. So I've got a few folks. How long did it take for the door to close? That's a great one. How fast were you going? Awesome. What was the noise at the end? Interesting question. Interesting. Did he get to the car before the door shut? Awesome. The door took a long time to close. Wondering what made the sound. Interesting. No, not good at multitasking. Nice. And I noticed the reflection of a building in the window. I wonder where the man is coming from and where he is going. Awesome questions. These typically I would, you know, Dan Mayer style, I would, you know, put some of these on the board and we try to get kids interested in what's going on here. I can let you know a few things. That's actually the board office, the Greater Essex County District School Board board office, downtown Windsor. And I am walking out of work, but what is it that we're trying to do? So what I want to do is go to the next question here. I'm going to have you watch this clip, and I'm going to have you make a note of the information given. And all I'm going to ask you to do here is I'm going to have you hit I'm finished watching once that video is done and you've jotted down anything you want. You might want maybe a scrap piece of paper for this activity as well. All right, looks like everybody's finishing up that video there. So making a note of what you saw, I'm going to go ahead and end this and we'll move on. Awesome stuff. Now, if you haven't guessed already, someone was asking how fast I was going, but actually what we're going to be looking at tonight is what this looks like. What does a sketch of my walk look like? So I'm going to encourage you, especially if you have a mobile device that has a camera on it, we're going to have you sketch a prediction on a piece of paper, and then we're going to have you describe what your graph looks like in the text box. And then in the next question, we're going to have you share out that sketch. So everyone's got to do this sketch. Make a sketch, keeping in mind that the dependent variable is the distance from work. So that door is my work, and we want to know, what would that graph look like? So once you're done sketching that graph, we're going to have you type in what you think that graph or what your graph looks like. Could be one word, could be a couple words, any sort of description to share out to the room here. All right, we've got some descriptions in here. I'll let you wrap up that last few folks. And other than that, I do not think so far they do not have that option. But again, that's something that I'm itching for. I would really like for a student to be able to submit more than once or to unsubmit and resubmit an answer, and that's something that they do not have yet. I've noticed that actually we have a couple an upload that just happened, so we'll see if it works. I'm not sure if the uploads show on a text response, but I've never done that before. But in the next question, we're definitely going to be uploading some solutions, but we'll see if that one came through. I'm going to go ahead and end this question. Let's have a look. Awesome stuff. As you see here, the upload solution didn't work. It doesn't work on text responses for some reason. I think the idea being if it's a text response, then there's no math. But that's something that I'm definitely going to mention to the gentleman at Knowledgehook. So I've got some people saying positive and linear. Awesome stuff here. I would probably argue there's probably a significant number of people here who are probably at stage 3 or 4 of the mastery, the stages of mastery. So in my class, I might not have students with maybe such elegant words here. Some might say going up, might say straight. Like these are all really good. I see down at the bottom, straight line going upward to the right. Like those are the things I'm really trying to pull from my students. Obviously, if my students know that it's linear and it's positive, these are all awesome things. Those are bonuses. But all I'm looking for, I guess all I'm hoping to get is at least some sort of description of what that would look like. It gives me sort of a diagnostic as to where they are. Do they understand, you know, the basics of graphs and scatter plots? So in this next question here, I'm going to let you folks watch the video below. And when you watch the video below, I'm going to have you self-assess yourself. Were you really close? Were you not so close, like bang on? Were you way off? And once you select your answer, there's going to be a button on the screen that says Upload Solution. And I'm going to have you, if you have a device with a camera on it, it would be awesome for at least one upload from someone so that we can share what this looks like. And the benefit I see for Knowledgehook in the classroom is that when we're in the class, that upload solution is an opportunity for students to share their thinking very quickly to the projector. And I can go through these questions or through these solutions and not have to reveal whose answer it really is. So we can actually help some students. We can look at common misconceptions, and we can, you know, essentially celebrate the really cool solutions and thinking that are going on in the classroom. So after you've pressed and self-evaluated, once you've selected, and you'll notice on my screen there's some green buttons flashing up in the top right corner. Solution uploaded is what that says. It says a student has uploaded a solution. So I know I have at least 2 solutions coming my way. And we'll see if any more come in once you self-assess. But at least we have 2, so that'll be a good place to start. And we'll see what some of these predictions look like. And don't be shy if your prediction, you know, wasn't so accurate. Now, I'm sure you'd agree, watching that video and getting to see the walk with the graph could be really powerful for the student. So while what we want our students to be able to do eventually is to be able to see that walk and be able to graph it and not have to prove it to them, we want them to have that unconscious competence. But in the learning process, I think reiterating what that looks like and sort of proving that to them can be really beneficial. So let's go ahead and end this question. And you'll notice here, I've got 2 solutions, and one of the solutions came from someone who said they were bang on, and the other solution came from someone who said they were really close. What's really effective about this is if this was a question that was, you know, had an actual answer, and maybe some other answers that were misconceptions, I would start with the misconception solution. So we can try to identify, like, where did that student go wrong, and see if other students can pick up on what happened, and hopefully they'll learn from it. Another solution just came up. You'll notice when I hit end on the question, you still have an opportunity to upload, which is always useful as well. So let's start over here with somebody who's really close. If it comes in sideways like here, I'm going to hit the rotate button at the bottom, and there we are with an awesome graph. Like, that's an excellent sketch, I must say, and I hope you don't mind, but I do want to show that I can reveal who it was. So good job, AIM or AN. Awesome. And if there were more than one student who submitted a solution from that particular solution or that particular response, I could just use the arrows to slide ahead. But we have 2 over here, and beautiful. We have actually some people doing this as a team. Is that cheating, or I'm not sure what that is, but that is wonderful. Look at that. It's like a math date. How awesome. If I scroll ahead, nice job, by the way, my friends. If I scroll ahead to our next, here's another solution for us as well. Great stuff, my friends. So you can really see, or I hope you can see anyway, how effective this can be in the classroom to quickly jump in and be able to share student responses without having to spend a lot of time with students redrawing it on chart paper or on an overhead or whatever you might have to do currently. So I'm going to close that. Awesome work there. I'm going to go to the next question. Here's walk number 2. We'll do a couple of these walks. We won't do a ton of them, but we'll let you take a look and kind of see the different types of walks. They will get a little bit more difficult as we go. And then again, I will share out where you can get this resource and where you can use it in your own classroom, including the actual game show that we're using right now. All right, so if you haven't done a prediction or uploaded a solution, I should say, from the previous question, I'm going to encourage you to give it a shot right now. It's real easy to do, and it's worth giving it a shot just so you can kind of see how the system works and what it might look like for your students. All right, we've got 4 in so far. And if you are working on sketching your prediction, you do want to upload it, just hit that button there just so that the upload solution option does appear for you. And then I can end the question. We can look at some of the other folks' solutions while you're uploading yours. So your solution won't get cut off when I hit that end button. You still have an opportunity to upload. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that end question button now. And if you were to upload your solution now, they would appear up on the screen. Okay, so we won't wait for solutions. I do know it is a webinar, and it is, the evening. You're dedicating your time, and the Blue Jays are on, and all these things. So I would definitely understand if you're not able or willing to put in another solution. I think it's pretty clear that you've done it from the previous one. So awesome stuff. In the next question, you'll see again, you get an opportunity to check your prediction and see how well you were, how well you did. And you'll notice that if you're working on a laptop, Lisa's asking us in the chat window, if you wanted to open or upload a solution, you would need a webcam of some type. So if you had a webcam on your laptop, you'd actually have to go into whatever type of laptop you have and use that webcam software to take a photo of it. Similar to our 2 participants who posed with their math, that's typically what I see happening, especially in a Chromebook classroom, where they'll go in, they'll just use the Chromebook like photo app, or I think it's just called Camera, and they go in there, they take a snapshot, and then you just grab that photo from your computer, wherever you've saved that photo. On a Mac, I'm on a Mac, so I would probably use Photo Booth or my FaceTime camera, and I would just take the photo that way. So definitely a little easier, I think, like 1 or 2 less steps on a mobile device, but still possible as long as you have the webcam. And yeah, definitely, Lisa, if you've never used the webcam on your device yet, you definitely have to do a little exploring. And that's the one I guess, trick when you're using different types of laptops. Usually they have their own built-in sort of workflow on how the webcam works. So something to keep in mind. Awesome stuff here. So you saw that one. Another easy walk. And here's another prediction for us that was uploaded. Awesome stuff. Thanks for playing along with us. That's great, especially in a room this size. It's almost like we have to rely on on the few to do the uploading. So great work. Awesome prediction. You'll notice though the questions will start to change a little bit. So we're only going to do maybe one or two of these, and then we'll move on to a different task. But you'll notice that I'm giving you the video, and now I'm sort of scaffolding, and I'm giving you sort of less scaffolding, and I'm gradually releasing the responsibility to you as the student. So now I'm actually giving you some options for the graph. My hope is that you would still sketch it. If this was in class, I would have you watch the video, then sketch it, and then I would give you these options. However, in a webinar, it can be a little bit hard. You know, it could be a little bit difficult in that regard. So, so I thought I would just kind of squeeze them together, try to maximize the number of tasks we can get through here. But after you watch that video, go ahead and select which graph do you think best matches. You'll notice that I've done my best to try and select, you know, give options that aren't too similar so that there's no real misinterpretations or misconceptions. What I'll do later as students start building their understanding and building their competency with this particular learning goal, then I'll start to make them a little bit trickier in terms of, you know, I believe this walk, I don't want to give it away, but I believe with this walk, you know, I could give some graphs that were fairly similar and try to see if students can reason out why they thought it was one over the other. And this is, would this be distance away from work? And that, again, we are still working the distance from work. So how far am I from that door in this particular scenario? So I see, it looks like we have 8 in now. Awesome. So we have a new joiner. Maybe Michelle's in there now. Awesome stuff. So let's go ahead and end this question. And let's see what we've got. Awesome stuff. So 100% of you selected the graph here. And to me, it's a great opportunity for us to discuss that flat line, the idea that, you know, I'm not changing distance, so that line turns into a flat line. And we can have that discussion as to, why the slope of the line here is the same as over here and so forth. So great stuff. We'll do one more here, and then we will we'll move on to a new task. So here's your walk, or sorry, I'll let you watch this this so you can see it. I like letting students see it so they sort of get the thrill of seeing that graph happen. Once you're done, we'll do one more of these graphs, and then we'll move on to another 2-variable problem that you can use in your classroom. All right, looks like everybody's in and finished watching. Awesome stuff. And here's that final walk, and then we'll move on. And Anik is asking a great question, that question being, do we have to create our own questions, or are there shared questions? So a couple of great questions. They do have a bank of, and maybe near the end, I'll try to earmark a little bit of time so I can take you on a little bit of a tour through the teacher side or the teacher dashboard. There are built-in questions that are available. This particular game show is a game show that I created. It's called a custom game show because I've custom designed it. However, you can share custom game shows as well. By me just going to the game show and taking the link at the top of the window and copying and pasting that to a colleague, your colleague can go in and run the same game show, or they can actually make a clone of it in their account and then go in and edit it to suit. So if they want to move a question around or take a question out or add a question, they're able to do that. So near the end, I'll try to earmark maybe 10 minutes and we can take a look. And Helena is definitely, you know, noticing the similarities to Kahoot, but again, yeah, definitely more options. Great uses for the math classroom. I never used Kahoot simply because I didn't like the timer. I just felt like it just caused a rush. And, you know, especially students who are already not feeling so great about math class, they were always feeling like, you know, there was that time was so important. And I really don't want students to feel that way in my class. So in this case, great job, folks. You guys have selected the correct graph. Awesome. So it's clear that you guys are at level 4 mastery on this particular task. Now, I'm going to introduce something a little bit different. This is a new task. That last task, I should preface, was called Walkout. And I'm going to share that link with you. It was called the Walkout task, and you can actually get to that task on my site from the link in the chat window. And now we're going to go into a new task here. And again, we're going to ask you a few little questions here. You'll notice that I'm going to spend less time in the next task. We're just going to sort of introduce it, give you kind of an overview of what the task is about so that you feel comfortable if it is something that you'd like to use in your own classroom. So in this case, we'll ask you to watch that video. What do you notice and what do you wonder? And it looks like most people have put in a notice and a wondering. We'll give you a couple, let's say 10 more seconds here, and then we'll end that just to kind of keep the flow moving. All right, so let's have a look here. We have, how long does it take for the candle to burn out? Awesome. We've got a few of those. And is it a garlic press on the table? I love it. That's actually, I think they're vice grips that I have on holding up that candle. How long will it take for the candle to melt? The candle's height is decreasing. Does it decrease at the same rate? That's awesome. I had a student this year that brought up that same question. How long did it take to burn? How much trouble did you get in for messing up the counter? Shh, that is something that we will not share with my wife. And I wonder how long it took for the candle to burn. Awesome stuff. There's been some other great questions that have come up over the past couple of years using this task. I had a student who asked, did you buy the candle at the dollar store? And when they asked that question, immediately I was thinking to myself, like, it's almost like they want to know information to answer a different question. So it was pretty cool to see that they were kind of thinking ahead. It was almost like they had decided, we're going to figure out how long it's going to take to burn. So while I'm debating on my prediction, because they know that's coming, you know, what kind of material was it? So if it was a dollar store candle, maybe it would burn down much faster. So I'm going to have you watch the video below. I'm going to have you make a note of what you see. And then I want you to start thinking to yourself with that information, because we will be making a prediction. In class, it's a little bit more lively because we do have that, you know, that human interaction. We can get students asking those questions, throwing them on the board, And then we can get students trying all kinds of different methods in order to solve this problem. And noting that I wouldn't do the last task right before this particular task. So sometimes students aren't sure exactly where we're supposed to or what we're supposed to do to figure this thing out. So it is a true inquiry where they get to use that information and really use their own reasoning to try to make a prediction. All right, so we've got some people coming down the stretch, finished watching, jotting down some of those questions. And there's the data you received in that previous video. So I'm going to give you guys a moment to try to think and make a prediction. And when I tell my students, when we talk about making predictions, you now have some information to work with. So what kind of logic, if you're thinking, typically I'd like my students to start thinking of a reason why they come up with their predictions. So they've got a little bit of information here. Sometimes I give them nothing, but in this particular case, I give them a little bit of data to work with to see what they're thinking and what direction they'd like to go in. So let's give you a little bit of time here to think of, what you might do. And I like to put teachers, and I like to get you thinking, what would you do if you were a student and you weren't necessarily sure what you were supposed to do? You're not at level 4 mastery yet. What would you do? All right, so we see some predictions starting to come in. So you're just typing in the number of minutes you think that it's going to take for that candle to burn out. What do you think? And again, really, if you're looking at this data, and I know from the teacher perspective, when I do this with teachers in face-to-face workshops, oftentimes you'll see immediately the teachers are trying to see if they can find a distinct pattern. And while there's a trend here, there really isn't a consistent first difference or any sort of perfect linear relationship happening. So it's difficult to try to just find an exact value, but you can definitely do a few things. So some folks, I would assume, probably did a graph. If you did any work on paper, I'd really encourage you to upload your solution. And we'll have a look. I'm going to go ahead and end this question now, hoping that any last folks here making their prediction are going to pop in their prediction, and then we'll take a look at what happens in this particular question. I will say though, this being the first session where I've done as much video on the participant side of things. I've really not enjoyed the process nearly as much as I have in person, simply because I don't get to see your reactions. I don't get to sort of experience it with you. I'm kind of just here. So, you know, I'm definitely feeling that tonight, and I'm hoping that you guys are getting a little bit of that excitement. However, I can almost guarantee you that whatever you're feeling now, if you're like, man, that was a cool task, it's so much better in class when you see students looking and watching. And I never ever will show my students videos on individual devices. I will always play the video on the projector so that we're all kind of sharing that experience rather than doing it in isolation. I really like that that culture that we build in the classroom. We celebrate after students when the person who has the closest prediction is closest to the answer. It's just a really great place and a great feeling when you're in the classroom and students are getting excited. So let's go ahead and end this, and let's see what we got here. We've got some excellent answers. I really like how close these predictions are. We've got a lot, you know, really within. It looks like within less than 100 minutes apart, right? So like just within an hour or so, which is really cool to see. And then obviously you can probably tell where this is going to be going. So just so you get kind of the idea, you get to actually check your prediction. And what I use this for, and we consolidate it as a group, we use it to introduce scatter plots, the importance of using a line of best fit or a curve of best fit. In this particular case, if you did sketch a scatter plot, you were looking at something that was fairly strong, negative, and linear. And in this particular case, just to kind of, you know, get some feedback here, we'll let you guys watch that video, just kind of see what students would get to experience. And then, you know, you can put in how close you were. Lots of you, I believe, are very close. So I'll let you watch that, and then we'll start making a transition to our last task. And the last task really is just sort of an ad, you know, or more or less like a trailer of the task. We're not actually going to do the task, but we'll just kind of let you see what it's all about, so that you feel like you've done it and you can implement it in your classroom. Now, while you're watching that last video here, this particular Act 3 video, for those of you who are not familiar with Dan Mayer's 3-act math task format, that's really what we've been looking at so far, is trying to slowly reveal some of the information, increase the tension. And right now you're in that Act 3. And you'll notice that this task was one of my first tasks that I ever created. And you'll notice that the videos are kind of long. And if you look at a lot of the more recent tasks, like the walkout task, you'll notice the videos are very short. So something that, if you are thinking about creating your own tasks, something to keep in mind is that, you know what, sometimes shorter is better. You know, being kind of clear and directed to the point can be very useful. I'm not going to suggest that, you know, teachers are getting, or students are getting bored necessarily with the task, but it can drag it out a little bit longer than it needs to. And I'm really seeing that, or I'm feeling it here, because some folks are still watching the video, and I'm sure with streaming that can make it even worse. And it looks like some people might even be having a hard time with, some people are having a hard time. It looks like we're having a little bit of trouble with the video either stopping or something along those lines. So I apologize for that. Weren't able to get. I'm hoping that the right video is in there. So I do apologize if that's the case. That task, that candle burning task, is available at this link here, and all 3 tasks and videos are available for you for after. So definitely check it out. And yes, the final answer, I guess, when it actually burns out, is at 362 minutes. So we had some folks very close to the final answer. So I'm going to go ahead and end this task because I'm assuming that either some folks, the video paused or something is going on with the video. So again, my apologies for that. I hope that isn't too much of an inconvenience. And when we see here, yeah, we had some folks that were only, you know, under 30 minutes apart, or 30 minutes off of the mark. So great stuff there. So again, that's candle burning, and great task for, again, introducing two variable relationships, scatter plots, and linear correlation. So you'll notice as well with Gameshow, there's lots that you can do. You can import images. You can just have some quick little ticket in the doors, ticket out the doors for formative assessment. And then you can even extend some of these tasks. So you don't have to go out in order to use Gameshow effectively. You don't have to go out and record a video. You can just simply put in a typical question. You can put in, you know, a standard question you might see in a textbook, or you can use some of the ready-made material as well. So in this particular case, what I usually do is I try to leverage any tasks we do in the classroom, and I try to get as much out of it as I can. We're not going to do a ton with each of these, but I usually have some extension questions, try to get my students thinking, giving them an opportunity to show that interconnectedness of mathematics. And here's one example of where we might go after the candles burning problem. We might start talking about relationships and then making some predictions, maybe interpolation and extrapolation, and you know, really try to maximize where we can, and sort of suck all the life out of or all the math out of the task anyway. All right, so it looks like most of our participants are in. So I want to leave us some time to tour around inside Gameshow. So I'm going to end this question. Awesome stuff there with our describing relationships there. So as the time increases, the height of the candle decreases. And finally, this is our last task. Don't spend too much time on what you noticed or what you wondered, but definitely check out the video. And this is also a great two-variable, three-act math task. So we're just going to briefly show you what this task looks like, but we're not really going to do a whole lot in terms of answering the problem. We just want you to kind of experience what the task is all about. Now, at this point of the night, some of you might be thinking, man, this guy doesn't have a life, and you're probably not too far off there. That pool is something that we spend much of our summer in with our two young children, one of which who's sort of screaming for me right now because he can hear me talking and wants me to go rub his back and send him to bed for the evening. But that particular task right there, I had on my mind for a number of years, and finally this year I said, you know what, we're gonna make this into a task. And I had meant to do it when we were filling, and I just lost track and forgot. And I said, you know what, let's try it when we're draining this pool. So I'm going to end the task here, and I'm sure a couple folks will guess this one. So how long until we're going to drain this thing empty? Some people are asking, why is there water coming out of the pool? Some students might even ask me, sir, why are you filming your pool draining? So lots of questions that can come out through discussion, and I want to encourage all my students to get creative. If you find that the questions are getting kind of lame or obvious, so sometimes they're a little more obvious, sometimes I'll ask my students, what's an obvious question? And then what's like a more obscure question that you might come up with, right? So trying to get them to think a little bit creatively. That can be fun as well. So just so you know where it goes, here's the Act 2 video. We'll let you watch that. And then when you're done, we'll move on to that Act 3. So just so you can kind of see how it works. It's fairly similar to your candle burning problem. So if you're introducing scatter plots and relationships, you know, you might want to introduce relationships with candle burning, and then maybe later in the unit, or when you're starting to get closer to a review of some type, you might want to introduce this particular problem as a way to kind of spark that curiosity again, see how far students have come in terms of whether they can make some predictions and have some reasons for their prediction. So it looks like almost everyone's done watching. I'll give you a little bit more time here so we don't cut anyone's video off. And something that is really interesting about this problem, if we were, you know, going through, if this was the only problem we were doing tonight, we'd spend a lot of time. I would let you guys graph this and try to make your predictions. And, you know, one of the best parts about this particular problem is that this is what students get in that Act 2 video, that screenshot. They can see a linear pattern happening. And then I've also included the Act 3 video. We're not actually going to, again, do a prediction here. We're just going to let you watch and see what happens. And in your mind, before you start watching it, maybe just kind of think to yourself, you know, where would this thing end? Like, how many hours would it take for this pool to drain? And we're going to see if what really happened was what you expected, or if it was not what you expected. Awesome stuff. So we got some people locked in there. Now, in class, I would never put the questions like, you know, is it what you expected? Is it not what you expected? Because, you know, you might start thinking, wait a second, I bet you this thing, you know, isn't going to be what I would expect. And it might have you thinking along those lines. In my class, my experience, most students are going to fire a line of best fit right through there. And they're going to come down and probably hit somewhere between, you know, around 50 hours or so, maybe closer to 60 hours. And they'll watch that video, and the disappointment that you see, and students, you know, start to say that I'm, you know, I tricked them, and they, you know, they really get passionate about it, which is, I think, is awesome. But then the best part is that discussion afterwards about, like, why did that happen? Like, why did the rate that the water was emptying, like, why did that actually slow down so drastically? And we can start talking about, you know, the weight of the water, and we can start talking about all kinds of other factors, other variables that are going to affect these particular variables, these two variables. And those are the conversations that I really enjoy after we see these types of problems and after we see the solution. So not only do they get to experience the math, they get to sort of, you know, do the math, not have the math done to them. And then we get to sort of go through the idea that, you know what, sometimes math actually isn't always 100% accurate, or it's not going to give us the exact answer that we might be looking for. So some really interesting things in my opinion. Thanks, Michelle, for sharing that link as well. Awesome stuff. So I'm going to end this thing. Awesome. So we had some people with what they expected, but a couple people, again, not so much. So let's go ahead, and the last question here is simply some links, but we are going to share this in the chat window, so don't worry too much about that. But this last link, I'll let you give me some, I guess, some formative feedback so far before I give you a little tour, just about, you know, how things went tonight. I know it's really not giving you a ton of opportunity. There will be a survey at the end of the session, so definitely do us a favor and let us know what you thought. And for me personally, if I'm ever doing an OTF session again, I want to make sure that I can tailor the approach to the session. If there was too much of something, too little of something, it's really important to know. So I appreciate this, quick snapshot. I'm going to share this last link in the window of the chat box, because this is actually the game shows. This is the link to the custom game show used tonight. So you get an idea of what I did inside of that custom game show to create it. You can make a clone of it, or you can just bookmark it and save it. The problem with bookmarking it is that if I make a change to it, it will change in your account as well. If you clone it, you've literally copied it so that you can make all the changes on your own. So some people will bookmark and they'll clone, so they have their own copy, plus they get to see any changes that the other person puts into it, and then they can use the one that that they want to use in their classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and end this. So thank you again for the feedback. That's really important for me to see. I appreciate that. At least there was no people saying a complete waste of time. That's always a good thing to see. What I'm going to do is end this game show, and that means on your end, you're going to have an opportunity to to put in a little bit of feedback for them. This is where I usually leave comments. For example, I'd say a few people wished that they could submit more than one open response text answer. Some people wanted to be able to unsubmit and resubmit. So things like that, and then I just press done, and then that'll send off to them, and they are fairly responsive as well. So on the back end, if you are planning on using this tool, you'll notice I'm logged in. I'm under the Game Show tab. They do have a paid feature called Homework. We're not going to really look at that tonight. That's something, this is like independent practice, so it's game-based, but students can do this on their own device anywhere they want at any time, whereas Game Show is teacher-paced. The teacher runs it in the class, and students use it from within there. So Game Show's free, so that's the tab we're in. And you'll notice that they have ready-made content. I'm a grade 9 applied teacher, so this is all my grade 9 applied content from the Game Show catalog, okay? If I want to go to a different course, I could go and I could say, you know what, my students aren't so strong with fractions. I could go back to grade 8, and I could come in here and I could look at the ready-made content for grade 8. It looks like there we go, my connection looked like it was a little slow there. So if I look for fractions, so here's comparing fractions, translating between equivalent forms of a number, determine common factors. Let's find another addition and subtraction of fractions. Great. So if I want to take a look at this game show, I'm going to open it in a new tab. So here it is. These are questions that are already built into the tool. There they are. I can show the answers, so I can kind of double check, and I could just run this thing to my class, or I could actually go ahead and add these questions to a custom game show. So I can copy their questions and make some modifications. If I go back to the custom tab, this is where I create my own game show. So the game show we just did tonight was OTF Connect. Let me just look for it here. There it is, 2 variable relationships. If I go in here and I press the edit button, I've got access to the entire game show. So here's all the questions that you folks had seen. And I could go in and actually edit these questions. So here it is, and I just copy and paste the Vimeo link in there. And I could change the answer type, and I can actually go in and I can use all their formatting tools here, including adding images, putting in bullets, putting in a table, whatever I want to do. I could even go in and edit the source code and do that. Now, if I want to just go ahead and take a look at how well you did tonight, I would go down to that OTF Connect session. So here it is. I go to View, and this is where I can share this link with colleagues. I just go into the URL. I can copy that and paste it in, and you folks with your own account, once you're logged in, you would get that game show. So you can share game shows with anyone, but then you also get reports as well. And when you're an owner, you can definitely edit. The one I'm sharing with you, that one you cannot edit until you make a clone of it. All right. But this does take a, does keep reports, so I can kind of see who was participating, who wasn't. This isn't to embarrass anybody if they were just kind of following along tonight. But it also lets me go in and see your uploaded solutions as well. So if I want to go and see Mel's work, I could go in and see. So Mel's one, I was having a little bit of a party over there with some math. I can see what she selected, and I can see her work, and I can go through and look at some of her other work as well. So this one looked like it never came through. The one thing that you can't see that they don't have here that they do when you share it in front of the class is the rotate button, and I've asked them for that. So that's supposed to be coming. So this needs to be rotated, and there is no rotate button yet. So again, lots to work with here. Oh, look at this. We had someone using the Texas Instruments, the TI-83. Look at you go. Awesome stuff. And again, we've got all of that data there. I can go question by question and check out how the class did as well. So lots of really good stuff there. And again, it is completely free. So enjoy that. I'm going to go back to the slide deck here so we can start wrapping things up. If I can find a way, here we are. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to where am I? Here we are. There we are. I just have to shut it off over here. Oops, there I am. Awesome. So we have turned off application sharing, and we're just going to wait for our slides to come back up. Awesome. So again, just to reiterate where you can get some of this data or some of these resources. So tonight we went through the walkout task, again on the Tap into Team Mind site or on that iTunes U course, depending on what you prefer. We looked at our candles burning task. And finally, that last task was our draining the pool task. So those links are coming up in the chat window right now. Great questions here. Leslie's asking, what program do I use to superimpose graphs on the videos? Awesome stuff. I am a huge Apple Keynote fan. It's like Apple's version of PowerPoint. It is super powerful. Typically what I do is I'll go in and I will actually make a graph in Keynote, and then I will make it transparent, an image of that graph. I'll make it transparent, and then I will put it over top of the video in Final Cut Pro. You can do some of this stuff in iMovie or maybe even in Windows, I believe it's Windows Movie Player or something. I can't remember now what it was called, but I used to use it. However, if you have a Mac, Final Cut Pro is amazing. It is fairly expensive. I want to say it's $299 for me personally. The best money ever spent. There you go. Chris has got it. Windows Movie Maker. I haven't used Movie Maker in a long time, so it potentially has come a long way. There was a lot of things you could do in there, but again, Final Cut really does give you a lot of opportunity. A lot of people use After Effects, which is by Adobe. That's also is a great tool as well. I know guys like Dan Mayer use After Effects, and Dan Euler, a few other guys. So I'm a Final Cut guy, and a good colleague of mine, John Orr, is a Final Cut guy as well. So take what you like and go with that. And then finally, just to kind of come back to what we started with this evening, the 4 stages of mastery. Hopefully, that'll resonate with a few people in thinking, how can we help students make it from that first stage all the way through the second and third prior to getting to that 4th stage, and we don't try to rush it and just jump from that first stage right to the 4th, because I think we're going to be hitting our head against the wall if we try to do that. So tonight we tried to use that task-based approach. We really want to leverage that inquiry process where possible. Recently, somebody at a workshop asked, And you know, it was a response from Dan Mayer that I thought was awesome. And the person said, like, what happens if you're doing a task and like the kids just like, you know, get stuck? And, you know, his response was great. It was, then you teach. Like, what a great teachable opportunity when students hit that wall, and then now you know exactly what you need to do. So teaching is not a bad thing. We just want to put students in a position where, you know, we can let them leverage their curiosity, and then we can try to use the explicit teaching where necessary and when appropriate. So trying to move us towards that procedural fluency is what we're ultimately trying to do, as long as we have that conceptual understanding as an underpinning. So with that, I'm going to, we have a few minutes left. I'm not sure if there's any other questions. If anyone wants to raise their hand and turn on their mic, or if they want to throw a question in the chat window, that would be great. And we'll give you a moment there if there are any, and then we'll start wrapping up for the evening. Okay, it looks like that might be it. Oh, we've got Brad is typing and Lisa is typing, so we'll give them a second here, and we'll see if they have a question. And yeah, Lisa mentions here, thank you so much there, Brad, for the compliment, and thank you for joining us. Lisa's saying coming up with the task is the biggest challenge, and I would agree with you. Coming up with the task is really difficult. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab you folks a link here. There is a great link that is worth your while, worth checking out, and it is from, it's called fishingfortech.com/MTBOS. That MTBOS is the Math Twitter blogosphere. It's the hashtag MTBOS on Twitter. That's where a ton of people in the math world, online world, hangs out, and they share all of their resources there. And this Fishing for Tech site has created, the gentleman's name is John Stevens, and he's created a Google search engine, a custom search engine that will search about, I'm gonna call it probably 200 math teacher blogs. So you can literally go in there and you can type in whatever the topic is you're looking for, and you'll see a ton of different things coming up. If you want fractions, or if you want two variable relationships, whatever you're looking for, it will bring those options up, and you can go ahead and do some exploring in there. It's a great way to save you from feeling like you have to do all the creating. I must say that creating tasks is very time consuming, and it's not reasonable for us to expect that every teacher would have to create the entire curriculum on their own. So if you find it something that you have an idea and you want to create a task, I would definitely encourage you to do it, but don't get down on yourself if you're having a hard time, coming up with an idea. There are so many people that have done so many things. Let's leverage what's out there, and definitely, definitely contribute where possible and when possible. But start with what's out there, and get yourself going. And ideas will come, and you'll sort of get geeky like me and want to start creating some tasks along the way. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up, and thank you again, and Anik and Elena, thank you so much for joining us, and Lisa as well. So I hope that the resources were useful. If you do use them, definitely stay in touch with me. I'm on Twitter as MathElitePierce, or you can, through my website, there's a contact form there. Would love to stay in contact, and I hope we run into each other again at some OTF conferences, or maybe online through an OTF Connect session. So thanks again, and have an excellent night, everyone, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kyle. Great timing. We are right on time, despite the fact that we started late. Thanks so much for everything. It was really a fantastic presentation. The game show was really impressive, particularly the ability for participants to upload graphs and pictures in real time. I also want to thank all the participants. You guys were all quite experience tonight. And obviously Kyle is a master at handling technology, posting links, answering questions. I must say that I almost felt redundant. I must confess also that since I'm from Europe, I know very little about baseball or hockey and did not know that the Blue Jays were actually playing tonight. So now I understand why we were in such a small committee. At this point, if you are eager to return to your families for the remainder of the evening, I simply want to wish you all a very good night and remind you to please complete our feedback survey. You should be redirected automatically to the survey page when exiting Blackboard. But just in case you are not redirected, I'm going to post it in the chat box. Here it is. For those of you who can spare a few additional minutes, I would like to give you a few additional pieces of information before we conclude the session. We have a number of exciting sessions related to mathematics in the coming days. On Monday, there's a session presented by one of my colleagues, Mali Bikli, about creating digital stories using iPad and iPhone. It should be really fun. And then I'm moderating for Crystal Lake on April 26th. And her subject is technology integration in mathematics. And she's a very nice, great facilitator. And I'm also moderating for Maria Van Vallis on April 28th. And her topic is how do we assess the mathematical mind. So obviously I encourage you to register for these two sessions. Aussi, bonne nouvelle pour nos collègues francophones, nous avons également quelques sessions en français qui sont planifiées pour les prochains mois. La session de Suzanne Forrester pour le 30 mai est intitulée « Le français en tant que deuxième langue ». Cette session sera principalement en français, mais si vous avez des interventions ou des questions en anglais, vous êtes toujours les bienvenus, évidemment. Pour le moment, les sessions de juin ne sont pas encore planifiées et pour plus de détails, je vous encourage à visiter le calendrier de la FEO dans 2 ou 3 semaines. So I'm just reminding all of you to visit our resource page and our calendar where you can find all the future sessions that are planned for the coming weeks. Here are the links. What else? Yes, sorry, just a second. I'm going to move forward to the next slide. I want to tell you about another opportunity provided by OTF and the Ministry of Education. If you are a qualified teacher and have completed an additional qualification course in math or technology, you may be eligible for $450 subsidy. And I'm going to pass the link. I'm going to post the link in the chat box if you wish to apply for that subsidy. So I would like at this point to present you all with the opportunity to give us your feedback on tonight's session and fill a short online questionnaire. The survey only takes a few minutes, so if you could do it right after the end of this session, it would be greatly appreciated. You should be redirected automatically to the survey page when clicking Blackboard, and I'm going to post that link one more time, just in case you are not redirected. This survey is quite important because it allows us to get your feedback and to pass it to the facilitators, and it's also a way for us to raise more funding for future sessions. So if you have a couple of minutes, please fill up the survey. And also, as a new feature, OTF would like to offer you a small bonus as a token of appreciation for your participation tonight. Once you have completed the feedback questionnaire, you will be redirected to another page allowing you to enter your name, and you will then receive a certificate of participation to this training session that you will be able to add to your professional resume. Please note that the certificate of participation is only available for 48 hours following this session. So try to do that if possible tonight or tomorrow. If you don't have the time to complete the survey, or if you missed anything tonight, please don't worry. We will send you tomorrow a follow-up email with a link to this recorded session, to the feedback survey, and all archived presentation. I would like also to provide you with the link to the resource page for Carl's presentation tonight. I'm just going to post it right now in the chat box, and that resource page should be available as soon as we end the session tonight. So that's it for the evening. I will now end the recording of the session. Please feel free to remain online if you wish to ask Kyle a few additional questions. Otherwise, I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you once again for participating in tonight's session, and we certainly hope to see you soon on OTF Connects. Thanks a lot.